Well, voters in Kansas going to the polls today to fill the congressional seat vacated by Mike Pompeo as he took over the CIA. President Trump recorded a robocall and tweeted support for Republican candidate Ron Estes and the unexpectedly competitive race there. And in the state of Georgia, early voting underway in the special election set for next Tuesday to fill the House seat vacated by HHS Secretary Tom Price. And by the way, that seat once held by my next guest. He held that seat in Georgia's 6th Congressional District for 2 decades. Joining us tonight, former Speaker of the House and 2012 presidential candidate Newt Gingrich. Newt, great to have you with us.
It's good to be with you.
Apparently, we've got 2 competitive races where everybody thought it might be just an automatic yawner. Not so much.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think a lot of different things going into it. When you get a new administration in, all the focus of the administration team is on governing, trying to just figure out how to run the place. And so there's not as much emphasis on politics. On the other hand, if you're the opposition party, you no longer have anything to do with governing, so you can pour all of your energy into trying to win seats. My guess is, and I checked before coming on the air tonight, my guess is we'll win Kansas by a reasonable margin. My guess is that in the end, the Democrat will lose in Georgia. He is, by the way, the great liberal hope. I mean, he got the cover of New York Magazine. Right. He's raised over $10 million. You know, every Democrat and every liberal in the country sees this as the great moment. My guess is he'll be at about 42% in the first round, and then we'll lose with 42 to 45% in the second round. A week ago, he had more momentum. The more people get to know him, the more they realize how liberal he is, the more they realize that 95% of his money comes from outside the state. I think he just gradually shrinks into being sort of the Obama-Clinton candidate. And in that particular district, that's probably not a winning ticket.
But to see the polling this tight suggests a lot of things going on that the Republicans would just as soon were not. As you say, $10 million, by the way, in a congressional race is a big deal, particularly on just one side of it. Let's turn, if we may, to North Korea, turn to Syria. You have said that you would like to see the United States remove both dictators in those 2 countries. The question looms large: how?
Yeah, no, I don't want us to remove them. I'd like us to support activities which would lead the military to remove them of their own country. Look, there are 2 different circumstances. I really, really worry about North Korea because I think that Kim Jong-un has no relationship to reality. I don't think he's ever left the country. I think he has no idea what he's dealing with. And Seoul, Korea, 25 million people, is so close to the North Korean boundary that it's really in danger if he decides to go a little crazy. So in his case, trying to find a way to get the military, who are very threatened. He recently killed his uncle. Last week he killed his half-brother. Right. He recently killed 5 officers, supposedly with an anti-aircraft gun. I mean, you know, this is not your normal everyday dictator.
And those are just the most
recent.
Who's
pretty whacked.
These are the most recent murders.
That's right. In a long history of murders, those are the most recent. Right. So there may well be a fairly large number of people who really would like to figure out how to replace him if they could. In the case of Assad, you have this challenge that Assad actually represents all of the non-Sunni elements in Syria. So if you're Christian, if you're Druze, if you're Alawite, you rally around Assad. And I think the key there is to one of the lessons we've learned from Libya and from Yemen and Somalia. Just blowing it apart doesn't do you much good because then you have a totally ungoverned area. But if we could find a way to communicate with the Syrian military that if they would replace him, that life would get better, I think that would be the best outcome that we could get in the short run. I think our role should be not to go directly in there at all, unless, again, of course, he comes back and does more gas attacks, in which case my guess is that the president will hit him harder and with more military power. But I think the president still will not be inclined to put American ground forces anywhere near Syria.
It's unsettling, I think, to many people to hear the number of folks, for example, in the Senate, a number of people start talking about boots on the ground. There is still a strong neocon impulse on Capitol Hill. There is insinuated within a lot of the institutions in Washington, D.C., that strong neocon reflex that wants to go to war at the drop of a hat. How persuasive and how powerful do you think the neocons are right now in this current climate?
I don't think they're very powerful inside the administration. I think General Mattis, who after all was involved in 2 wars in the last 15 years, understands that, wars are easier to get in of than to get out of. And he understands that it's very, very dangerous. We do not today have a record of learning how to impose our will very effectively. Afghanistan is very fragile. Iraq is very fragile. Western Iraq is chaos. Yemen is a disaster. Somalia is a disaster. Libya is a disaster. I think we ought to be a little careful before we cheerfully decide that we're prepared to go and put ground troops into a place like Syria.
You would think with that record that our military would be, well, led by very modest men, no matter how many stars are on their shoulders. Newt Gingrich, thanks for being with us. We appreciate it, as always, talking with you.
Thank you.
Newt Gingrich.